Collinsport sits at the edge of the sea, and those who live and work in the small town intentionally avert their eyes from the house that sits beyond the forested landscape high atop the craggy hill, for the denizens of Collinsport have heard the whispered rumors of curses and tragedy, and they know that there is terror at Collinwood. There's nowhere to run, there's no place to hide. This podcast is fun, but there are spoilers inside. Welcome to Terror at Collinwood. 'Tis I, your hostess, Danielle, aka Penny Dreadful, and I am delighted to bring you my guests today. Oh, this is going to be fun. I can hardly wait. I am joined by three very wonderful individuals who I met at Seaview Terrace at Collinwood, and we took a trip down to Essex, Connecticut to the Griswold Inn. We visited the Evans Cottage. It was a great time, and I had a blast hanging out with them at the Griswold Inn when we were down there. I am joined today by Madelyn Marks, who is 25 and hails from Pennsylvania. Madelyn is the admin of the Dark Shadows Discord group we're going to discuss today and has been a Dark Shadows fan since 2011. Other interests include local Pennsylvania history and historical demonstration, and she's currently pursuing a career in manufacturing. Next up is Tina Marie DeLucia, who is a graduate of Fairleigh Dickinson University, where they earned their BA with a focus on fiction writing and a minor in creative writing and British studies. They're always eager to expand their horizons. Tina has been published in science fiction, horror, and nonfiction short story collections, and has written several online articles covering topics from theater to British sci-fi television to soap operas, and has even written several analytical essays ranging everywhere from film theory to the nature of adaptations. A queer writer with a passion for comedy, gallows humor, and science fiction, they can sometimes be found making costumes for comic conventions. And last, but certainly not least, is Max Kern, who is 25 and is also from Pennsylvania. Madelyn got Max into Dark Shadows when they met in 2013. He works for Open Stage Harrisburg as a theatrician.
I knew it was gonna
I almost said pediatrician. I was like, wait, that's not a word. Theatrician. Welcome to the show. I'm happy to have the three of you here.
It's so awesome to be here.
Yes, definitely.
Fantastic. I'm so glad you're able to do this. We haven't seen each other since it was October. It was Halloween. It was Halloween.
Yeah, it was October.
Yes.
That we hung
Many
out.
moons.
There was that great costume party we went to that Bob Issel threw over at Seaview. And Madelyn was you were Barnabas, and Max was the Bat.
He was Bill Bard.
He was Bill Bard.
He's
Yes.
Bill Bard with Bat.
With that, Bill Bard with that, with the pole and everything. It was pretty impressive. That was awesome. What was your costume again, Tina?
I was Julia.
Julia, that's right. You were Julia. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I didn't have a Dark Shadows costume. I had a gorilla costume left over from our Halloween special.
Iconic.
So
Iconic as heck.
I was like, well, it was what it was, but we had fun. We definitely had a good time. So I want to talk to you about the Dark Shadows Discord server and what, being a young Dark Shadows fan today. But before we get into all of that, Madelyn, you brought one of the coolest things I have ever seen. It is a Dark Shadows Lego Collinwood. It was the drawing room and the foyer.
Yep.
With all the minifigures. Oh my goodness, that blew my mind to see that. So,
Here she comes.
Here it comes.
Retrieve it here. And I'm gonna hold it up to the camera. And I did send Penny some pictures of the set that she can do something with, so that you can get a better view besides just me you getting a blurry, badly lit picture through the video camera. But here is the drawing room. And I think I can't bring it too much closer, otherwise the light will cut out.
That's okay. I'm going to splice in the pictures.
And the fireplace, and I also have to use a tiny little preview image at the top of the screen. The fireplace lights up as well, if you can see that.
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
And yeah, I've got a little light brick in the back and all the furniture and fixings
Wow.
for it.
That's amazing.
And the foyer.
There it is. Yeah, look at that. The
Maybe
stairway.
angle. There we go.
That's good.
Don't
And
drop.
if I
Don't
can
drop
get
it.
my flashlight, I can do the light through
yeah.
the
The
stained glass.
glass.
There we go.
Look at that.
You just have to flicker it to stimulate the lightning.
Yeah, there we
Yeah.
go. There we go. Wow.
And I'll hold up the Barnabas portrait that I
Yeah.
drew and then printed out and pasted and cut into the Lego frame.
It's
Oh, there we
Yeah.
go.
it's so cool.
That's
And like I said,
amazing.
she has better pictures that she'll splice in or do something with.
Yeah.
And then the minifigures. I'm actually going to move the computer forward a little bit for this, and then I'll move it back.
Yeah.
Just
better
into the
for
light.
lighting.
There we go. Oh my gosh, you're making a mess. All right. I'll start with present day. So, and none of these are, these are all custom Lego minifigures.
Right.
Minifigures is what the technical term is for the little Lego people. All of these are official Lego pieces that I've collected through different sets or bought single on the internet, but they're all official Lego. None of these are like custom printed pieces.
Mhm.
So I'll start with Barnabas and Julia, Willie, Roger,
Yeah, with the brandy.
Elizabeth, and Carolyn.
It's amazing.
And then we have, start from this side again. Vicky, if I can get the
Oh,
angle,
yeah,
the
yeah.
light good. There we go. Vicky, David, Burke, Maggie, and Joe.
I love it.
And then I've got a couple extras for the present day. I've got Amy, Tom, and Chris, and the werewolf,
Yay.
and Jeb and his Leviathan box.
Oh, look at that. That's so cool.
And then I've also got the 1897 crew. And I need to switch a hairpiece because I only have one of a certain,
Oh,
the
yeah.
hairpiece that I
Yeah.
use for the Lewis Edmonds characters. So I have to swap it.
I mean,
Or I
fair.
can just leave them bald, whatever. All right, so we have Jenny,
Wow.
With the scissors.
Quentin, Edward, Judith, Carl, and Pansy.
Yes. Yay. I love it.
And last one. There we go. Magda, Anne Sandor, Angelique, and Count Patofi and Aristide.
Yes. Awesome. I love it.
I'm sorry, you can't leave out Garth Black.
Oh, yes, and
Yes,
Oh.
can't forget.
No,
Everyone's-
definitely not.
The famous Dark Shadows character.
Garth,
Garth
even
Black.
has
Yeah, do it like it's a beauty product. Do the perfect.
I love it with his chain and everything. I love
I
it.
have a few for, I've tried to do a few for 1795,
Mhm.
but once you get back that far, it's a lot harder because Lego has only done a very small handful of period, like torsos and legs.
Mhm.
So I have a Joshua, there's the Joshua. This is so
Yeah.
hard in the reverse camera. I'm sorry. Joshua and Lieutenant Forbes.
Yeah,
And
that's great.
that's about it that I've got
Yeah.
for 1795.
Okay. Those are just absolutely amazing. Like the fact that you did different eras of the show.
Oh, in the
and-
old house. I forgot.
Oh, the old house. Look at
This is my little micro scale old
Yeah,
house.
that's so cool. Wow. Just for people listening to the audio version of this podcast, hop on over to YouTube if you want to see the images and the video for this, because you definitely don't want to miss this. Believe me, it's really cool. You used, I remember we were talking at Seaview, you used Cy Tomashoff's blueprints, didn't you, to build that?
Yes. Yeah, for the sets, I had purchased a collection of Cy Tomashoff blueprints for the show. I forget if it was Etsy or eBay, but they reproductions, not originals. And I wish they were originals, but and that's what I used to get like the proportions and the sizing of the rooms and the architectural stuff.
Wow.
Someday I might do the old house, but the old house is a bit more challenging because there's not as much wall space, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
In the old house set. So.
Yeah, gotcha. What
But
about?
I definitely want to do a little micro scale CV terrace.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah.
I need to go back there and poke around in person first, though.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, that would be incredible. That'd take a lot of Lego bricks, I would imagine, to build something like that.
I already like mapped out the footprint of it,
Mm-hmm.
and it would only be like 20 or 30 studs long.
Okay.
So it's not huge. It's going to be smaller than like this. It would be a lot smaller than the foyer.
Okay.
In terms of length.
I see. Okay. I saw the table of contents for Daytime Gothic, and I saw that there's a Lego Collinwood entry there. So did you write an article about your Lego?
It's not an article, no. It's just the photos.
Oh, I see.
I did pose the Lego minifigures in the foyer, and I took some pictures of like, you know, the actual characters and things. And because I've also got some other little pieces that go inside the model that I didn't have because they're not attached to anything. They're just free floating. So if I hold them up to the camera, everything's just going to fall around everywhere. So you're not seeing all the little knickknacks and things like that bronze statue that's always on the table in the foyer of the man with the shovel or whatever he is. Like I have that represented in the Lego. Where's the clock?
Or the three-way kissing
Wait,
chair.
that exists as a Lego thing? Like how?
It's like 3 bricks.
Oh, okay.
We got like 3 bricks.
Here, I have it right here. It's this tiny little thing.
Oh, okay. Okay.
This little tiny guy.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, I can see it. Yeah. Nice. Oh, that's fantastic.
You set it on the table earlier.
Oh, here it is.
There it is.
Yeah, and here's the clock in the foyer.
Oh yeah, look at that.
Whoever built that did a really good job.
He built that.
I
Did
wonder
you
who it
really?
could've been.
Oh, so you were involved with this as well, Max?
I helped out with like some of the pieces of furniture and finding different ways to recreate the different set pieces from the different eras.
Nice. Did it take a long time to put that together?
It's an ongoing project that was done over the course of months, hours of work, brainstorming, all sorts of stuff like that.
Like here's the 1897 three-way conversation seat.
Oh yeah,
The iconic.
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, it took so long, in fact, that only the foyer is featured in Daytime Gothic because I forget if I hadn't even started construction on the drawing room at that point.
I think you might have been trying to find the wooden paneling to work on that because like that was a
Yeah.
big issue
Yeah,
if I
that
recall
one
correctly
required
when you
an
were
online
discussing
order.
about it.
Yeah, so like for the drawing room, this is what the walls are made out of, like over 100 of
wow.
these individual pieces, which are hollow boxes. So I also use them for storage for little knickknacks.
Yeah. Wow.
But yeah, I had to order special for that because I didn't have just 200 of those laying around, believe it or not. So
You don't carry around 200 Lego crate boxes?
Right.
I got some in my pocket right now.
I
Doesn't
keep
everyone?
trying to remember, and I keep forgetting. So
That's incredible. That's just what labor of love. Definitely. That's really cool.
I could theoretically make up like a parts list.
Yeah, and like maybe
I think there's software that you can like make instructions
Yeah.
for your custom Lego builds, and you can like
Oh.
print them out. So if you wanted to build your own Lego Collinwood, I wouldn't be able to supply you with bricks. You'd have to source those yourself, but
Right.
I might possibly be able to work something out where I could make instructions if people would be interested in that.
Yeah,
That's great.
long term, that I think would be a possibility. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm sure there are fans out there who would love to know how you did that and would like to try it themselves. So this brings me to kind of our focus here of our discussion. When we were down at Seaview, actually at the Griswold, and you were telling me about the Discord server, and we got to talking, and I was really impressed by the way you described the community. I had heard of Discord servers before, but I never had joined one before. I knew it was like I wasn't even sure what it was. I think I asked you to explain to me what what it was, because I'd always heard it kind of associated with gaming and things like that, but I guess it's
Yeah.
now evolved. But I was also taken by the fact that, like, I think there's a perception out there, Dark Shadows has an older fan base, but it was really cool to see younger Dark Shadows fans who are just as passionate about Dark Shadows. Like, I always thought of myself back, because I'm a second generation fan, so I was like, well, I was at the time I was one of the younger fans, and now I don't feel like one of the younger fans, but you guys definitely are. So I'd like to hear about your experience, first how you got into Dark Shadows, and just kind of going around, and just Tina, go for it.
Well, it began 30 years ago. No, okay.
It was
It
a
kind
very
of
stormy night.
There's a girl on a train. No. So I kind of have to blame or thank my grandparents and also my parents for this, because I was always the kind of the weird, kooky kid. So, age 5, I had a crush on Vincent Price, and my dad's like, here's the monsters. And so because of stuff, I know. So much has changed. But from that, my grandparents, when they sat me down they had all these old VHS tapes of stuff they taped, and like, I think you'd really like this, kid. And it was an episode of Dark Shadows. I couldn't tell you what episode it was, but I was enamored immediately. And being the kind of person that I am, despite being very little, I'm like, I must learn everything about this thing because I like it now. And it spiraled from there. And also, as someone who was super into Doctor Who as well, which is also a very and similar age program and stuff like that, I was kind of used to liking old things and knowing where to find stuff and watching things definitely legally, for sure. So, and then trying to find fandom from that, and unfortunately, here we are. Went on Tumblr. It's just weird because when I would go on like Tumblr and things like that, I'm like, well, it is just me and some dead blogs of blogs people didn't really use anymore, and the same 5 gift sets and a piece of string. The only one who was really exactly the only one who was really still actively posting was this one blog who was run by that person over there, which is kind of fun because I really thought like I was just by myself for the most part. Like, even when the movie came out in 2012 and I was hyping it up to my friends, I'm like, this is so good, and then the movie happened, and then I was like, oh, never mind, don't look at me.
That's how I felt back when I was in high school, like in the 80s. I remember, because Dark Shadows had already been off the air and it had been in syndication, but most of the people I knew in high school had not seen or heard of Dark Shadows, so I felt very kind of isolated in my like passion for it until I discovered the fandom, which even at that time was kind of challenging to suss
Mail
out.
order.
Yeah,
right?
yep. Send us AZ, to the Dark Shadows
For
Festival.
$2.99.
Yeah. And eventually I found my way in, but it was took a little while even then. So, but I'm glad that you found each other there through a Tumblr. That's really exciting.
Yes.
Yeah. And how about you, Max? How did you? Well, you said my intro. You got into it through Madelyn. So
Man, maybe I should go first here.
yeah, go
I'm actually
first.
just
Sucked him in.
Yeah.
So, my story is pretty involved, and apologies if I ramble on too much about it. But Well, you said that you were a second generation fan.
Mhm.
I don't mean to scare you, but I am also a second generation fan,
Yeah.
believe it or not.
Yeah.
My mom watched the show when she was in high school when it was on the original run, and then she waited 40 years to have me. But I didn't get into it through. I mean, I got into it through her, but it wasn't. She wasn't the catalyst for it. So I said that I am involved in local Pennsylvania history. When I was in 6th grade, I started volunteering at a historical site that's in my town. It's actually a National Historic Landmark, the Ephrata Cloister. And they had a student program, like a volunteer student program. And the year that I joined, they had their biannual, I always forget if biannual means twice per year or every other year. The trip was every other year.
Okay.
Every other year they did a weekend trip in the summer. And the year that I joined was the year that they had one. And it was to Tarrytown in New York. And you know where I'm going with this. We went to Washington Irving's house and Sleepy Hollow Cemetery and Lyndhurst. And my mom went with me on this trip because I was in like 6th grade. I wasn't old enough to go on a trip by myself. So she came along. And while we were there, they mentioned, they filmed movies here. And my mom was like, oh yeah, that was, I used to watch that show when I was in high school. So when we got home, she bought House of Dark Shadows on VHS tape. I don't know why VHS if the DVD hadn't come out yet or whatever, but she got on VHS tape and we watched it. And I was interested. And she said, oh yeah, I've also got like a VHS tape of the first 5 episodes that I think she bought it from like the local library sale or something weird. And at first I was like, oh man, I don't want to, this stupid soap opera. I don't want anything to do with that.
It's so whack.
And here I am 10 years later. But
Dark Shadows.
So what sucked? So how did you get sucked in if you were resistant at first?
I was resistant at first, but it was only like the very, very, like before I'd even seen an episode. She's like, "Oh, it's a soap opera," and I was like, "That was it for me." Like I didn't want.
You're out about yeah.
Yeah, I already had a preconceived bias that I didn't like soap operas, but so like I watched the movie House of Dark Shadows, and like the first couple episodes, and then I forget how we found out about it, but this was the summer of 2011. But we found out about the Dark Shadows festivals. And my mom said, hey, wouldn't it be fun if we went to one? So she took me, it was like, not even a year, only a couple months being a fan. She took me to one of the festival in New York. And I feel very lucky that she did because that was the last one that Fred attended before he died. And I wish I remembered it more, but I was very young. And it snowballed very rapidly from there. Like I remember that same summer, I think I went to visit relatives up in New York, and I downloaded one of the Dark Shadows like companion book on my Kindle, and I was reading that on the way up, and I fell hard. Yeah, and I haven't looked back.
Awesome, I love it. It's funny that you mentioned the I've talked about this on the podcast before, the soap opera stigma with regard to Dark Shadows, because I've seen that. You're not the only one. I've seen people like react like with Barnabas with somebody holding the cross. It's like, no, put it away. But it wasn't introduced to me as a soap opera. It was just this cool show with monsters and an ongoing storyline. And even to this day, I kind of refer to it more as a serialized Gothic tale, because Dan Curtis was coming from that background and interest in ghost stories and old horror films and things like that, and telling this Gothic story. And as the show went along, even from the beginning, I would say it was different from the standard soap opera of the time, but it evolved into something very unique, which had some soap opera elements, but a lot of also Gothic elements in it as well. And I've seen that reaction from some horror fans that are just they've or just fans of pop culture, genre television, they're like all in for everything else. But when they find out just, oh, Dark Shadows is that soap opera, they're
SP word. Wait,
yeah,
no, I can't
it's
spell.
The S word.
the S word, the S word.
The SO word.
Yeah, I always call it a serial. It's just
It
like
is. It's just serialized television
serialized television.
Yeah.
Everything
with
is
a bat on a
serialized.
string. These things
Yeah,
happen.
exactly. So Max, what about you?
I want to circle back around when Max is done. I forgot something, but I'll let
Oh,
Max go first.
Oh, okay.
okay.
There's no way around it. Like my Dark Shadows journey came about as a function of my friendship with Madelyn. We met in high school and just became pals. And then the longer I knew Madelyn and the closer we became as friends, the more I learned about Dark Shadows. And now it's a huge part of my life, of course. And yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know how else to describe it other than that.
What was it about Dark Shadows that sucked you in? Is it because you're I know you're involved in theater. Is it the theatrical aspect of it, or was it just the supernatural stuff? Like, are you a fan of that kind of thing?
It's tough for me to remember the timeline really, because nowadays I'm totally into all that. I don't remember how much I was into the classic horror stuff
I think it was more
back
the
in
theater
2013. I think it was more the theater because we met in stage crew.
for the
Oh,
our
okay.
school plays.
Right.
Cool.
And so we were both involved in like all our high school theater productions, and theater productions in college too.
Mhm.
And I mean, like probably one of the earliest things I remember Madelyn telling me about Dark Shadows that I was like, oh, that's really neat, is of course all the famous examples in the show of when you can see a boom mic or a stage hand or interesting things going on that happen when you film a show live.
Mhm.
And
Or
so
live to tape.
live, right, live to tape. Yeah.
Ancestors.
And and that endeared me to it. And then I just learned more and more there. And I think probably one of the next things that really drew me in is the performances of the cast.
Mhm.
Because I'm really into film and I love to see a good performance. And man, the people in Dark Shadows, there's so many unique performances and so
Oh,
many
yeah.
things that there's no one else like them. There's no one else doing what they did. And I just became entranced by that.
Yeah. Awesome. Madelyn, you said you wanted to circle back and say something.
Yeah. Tina mentioned experiencing the show through Tumblr, and I wanted to come back to that because that's also kind of where I started my like fandom experience with the fandom, where it was like a year or two after I found out about Dark Shadows. I forget how I saw this, but I noticed that there was Dark Shadows stuff on Tumblr. And I made a Tumblr account and I joined, and there was a small handful of blogs that were like people my own age who were posting about Dark Shadows, who were like live blogging, watching it, just posting their reactions as they were watching along, making like gift sets or screen cap, all the usual Tumblr stuff. And that's kind of where I got my start in terms of the fandom. And I would always poke around in the other Dark Shadows sites online. But yeah, my Tumblr username was sites9.
Mhm.
And it still is.
Yeah,
And it still is.
And it's, yeah.
And I think a lot of the people in the Discord came through Tumblr. They found out about it through Tumblr.
Oh, 1000%.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's our main recruiting pool.
Okay. Was Tumblr more like artwork based? Or am I thinking of Flickr? I'm thinking of Flickr.
Tumblr is
It's what do they call it? Like microblogging?
microblogging, yeah.
Okay.
So the way that Tumblr works, Tumblr is not it's not set up like a typical social media in that there is no algorithm that affects what your dashboard or your home screen feed of content is. It's only dependent on the people that you follow. And
I
when you
see.
follow someone, whenever they reblog something from someone else or they make an original post, it shows up on your dashboard. But beyond that, there's no algorithm spitting things at you. So it's a really different experience. And I wouldn't really call it a social media in the same
I
way that the
wouldn't.
other dominant social medias are at the current age.
Like it didn't get messaging until I want to say 2016, like a proper working messenger.
Direct message, DMs.
Direct messaging, yeah. Like
I
I mean,
see.
there's always a message function. At least we forget, but like a direct messaging, that's within the past
Okay.
7
And-
years probably.
Right. But there was
Tumblr, you can make text posts that has like tens of thousands of word limit. You can upload videos. What?
Yeah, just
Poorly.
all the different ways
You can upload videos. You can upload just audio files.
And the way that you would find things that you like is that you would tag things. So if I'm posting about Joan Bennett, I would tag Joan Bennett. And if someone was looking for Joan Bennett, they could see my post in the tags. And if they're like, that's a good post, I think
Yeah,
I'll follow you.
can
And then you
search
see all
for
their stuff.
tags.
I see.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Okay.
then you'll see things that everyone has posted, even outside of your followers or the
Mhm.
people that you followed that have posted in that tag, and it'll show up in that.
And
Oh.
I feel like in general the tagging system on Tumblr is again, in following with the trend, a little less burdened by algorithms on other websites that would be trying to show you like sponsored things. You search a tag on Tumblr, you're just
in that tag.
Yeah. There's no advertisers on Tumblr because it's not a profitable website, and that's exactly why I'm still using it.
Exactly. It has done nothing but cost Yahoo money, and that's why I love it.
Let me ask you this. This is a question. This came up in a conversation with Jeff, what I had with Jeff Kenny, who is a regular at CVU as well and runs the Dark Shadows Collectors Group. And he said that he's also a younger, he's in his 30s, and he found that overall, I mean, I think we've had great experiences with the Dark Shadows fandom. He said he's encountered some people that were I guess considered only the original fans to be true fans. I have seen some of that online. I have, which is irritating, but generally, especially in person, I have never encountered that kind of mentality. I've always found the Dark Shadows fandom to be welcoming of all groups, age groups, and people from different backgrounds, etc. But I remember back when I was joining the fandom in the 80s and through the 90s, I was kind of scared I guess I had this idea that I might be rejected or something if I shared my true age with some of the run home from schoolers, so I was like, oh, I don't want to, but I never found that in person. How about you? Have you ever encountered that, or have you found it to be welcoming with younger generations?
I've had very little in-person Dark Shadows fandom experiences, but so far they've been nothing but lovely in person. Like that going to CVU, that was like great and warm and wonderful, and like that's the happiest I've been in months. But I guess in terms of online, I think Madelyn and Max will agree, I kind of avoid Facebook.
Wise. Yeah.
Just because of not because of like, well, Facebook is Facebook, but just some of the things that people do on Facebook, it's just like, it's a little exhausting. I've only encountered a couple of pockets of online, not necessarily Dark Shadows fandom classism per se, but there's been a couple of individuals that are feel very secure in their superiority because I know what the fandom is because I've been here, and you don't know what it is. Even if you've watched it, you don't understand. But I can only think of 2 or 3 individuals off the top of my head who have done that. Would you agree?
I would say, like, based on the things I've seen, statistically, you're going to get people like that in any group, and I don't think the Dark Shadows has more than average. I think it might even have less than average. In general, the community is incredibly friendly and
just happy to see new people, fresh blood.
Yeah, I would say
their enthusiasm about the show.
Yeah, I don't remember if I feel like I may have at one point in my journey felt hesitant to reveal my age online, but I think that was more just because I was like,
Online.
15.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
revealing that you're 15 online is not always a good idea.
Yeah.
But more than that, I just never really interacted directly with a lot of older Dark Shadows fans online. Like my main, the only Dark Shadows space that I actually was active and participated in was the scene on Tumblr, which was like a small handful of other people who were roughly my age, like
Or a little
20
older.
20 or less, like people in high school too. And like I would lurk, I would go to like forums and I would just read for hours. I wouldn't post anything, but I would just lurk different places.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't say that I really experienced any like gatekeeping.
Good. Like what Max said, like there's always in any fandom, you're going to find this cross section of people that maybe is kind of does the gatekeeping thing, or I know better than everybody what makes Dark Shadows tick and all this kind of thing, and everybody's entitled to their own views and opinions about the show, and it's not cool to discriminate against others because of their own positions or views on the show. So and
Okay.
age wise as well.
Speaking of own opinions about the show, I don't know what kind of outline you had for how this episode would go, and I know you wanted to keep it close to an hour, but one of the things that I thought would be fun to talk about is differences that I have noticed in the ways that we, like the younger fans, at least the ones in the Discord, view characters.
Yeah.
Yes.
I
Yes, yes,
definitely
yes,
want to
yes,
talk
yes,
about
yes,
that.
yes,
And
yes.
I definitely want to talk about that. And I want to talk about Tina's article, if that's cool too.
Yes,
Because I really love that article. But yes, I would like to talk about that. But let's dive into the Discord and talk about the Discord server. So can you explain? I'm sure a lot of the listeners of this podcast probably don't know what a Discord server is. So can you tell the listeners what is a Discord server? How does it work?
Want to take it away, Max?
TLDR,
Right.
Max.
So the easiest way to access it would be by downloading the Discord application on your computer or your phone. You get an invite link, you click the invite link, and you are met with
It's basically a chat room kind of environment.
You're met with channels, which are just ongoing
conversations,
streams of messages that are updating as often as people use them. And you one of the nice things about Discord is that you can divide the server into channels. And so for our Dark Shadows Discord, we have channels for all the different like arcs of the show.
I don't know if you can see this when I hold my screen up to the camera there.
Like
there's
yeah. And so it makes it easy to divide into different topics. It just allows for greater focus of discussion in each of the different channels.
I even though I am like the moderator on the server, that the way that I got to that position is a story in and of itself. The Dark Shadows Discord was created by another Tumblr user who found the show and they just blew through it. Like they were really into it for maybe like a year, and they created the Discord because they were ravenous for someone else to talk to about this cool thing that they found. And so a lot of people from Tumblr came over, and it was pretty small at first, and then that person just like left and they moved on to different fandoms and different interests, and they made me mod. Tina, whatever you said didn't pick up on the
Yeah,
microphone.
I said wherever they are now, we wish them well.
Yes.
In the void.
But so, and I'm now the chief mod, but like I had never heard of Discord or even used it before I joined the server, so I can do my job well enough, but I'm by no means an expert.
Yes, I would hope that any newcomers would be somewhat comforted by the fact that we're not at the end of the learning curve either. We're all learning new things about it.
You were kind enough to send me an invitation. and I've been in there the past couple of weeks, checking it out, and it's really fun. I love just the conversations. Before we started recording, I was talking a little bit about it. It's very there's a fun, upbeat, lively group of people in there that are talking about a variety of different things, having a good time. There's a little bit of a naughty vibe to it, but also just fun, and feels like a kind of just everybody hanging out, having a good time, talking about Dark Shadows and many other topics as well, but Dark Shadows centric. And I like how it's divided up into channels, like Max was saying, with the different storylines, but you also have sections for just general conversation. You have sections to talk about like some of the spin-off media that you had listed there.
Yeah, we have like a different channel for like the comics, the movies, the reboots.
Mhm.
And some of them are like you could put a conversation in multiple channels because we have overlapping things. Like we have a
Right.
films and a
Mhm.
reboot channel, and it's like potentially you could count either one. Like the 2012 movie. I think we even have a separate channel for the 2012 movie as well. Maybe.
I thought we
I don't know.
might have. Let's see.
Deleted that one.
There's like
Burn it. No.
films,
Um,
reboots. We have a channel just for the Big Finish audio dramas. We're talking about those.
We've got the live blogging channel, so if people are just like, I'm watching episode 286, here are
And
my
I
thoughts
wanna-
and
I
feelings,
wanna
they can
react
go
to
off.
Maggie's dress that she's wearing. They can post it in the live blogging.
Mhm. And then there's also like creative stuff like fanfic. There's
Yeah, fan fiction, fan art.
fan art. I was going through some of that
There's
as
a
well.
lot of good fan art
Yeah.
that's come
There's
out of
some
it.
beautiful
We've
fan
got
art.
some
Oh
really
my
good stuff.
goodness.
Like,
Yeah.
I hope that I have. It's
Go
okay
get-
for me to show this, but I want to show something.
Oh yeah,
From
okay.
M.
Yeah.
I think so.
This is something our friend Emily made. Their Discord name is Emster, the little bird.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that.
It's,
Look
I
at
forget
that.
what kind of paint this is, but
Gouache.
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 Look at
Gouache,
that.
whatever.
What?
Gouache.
So for the
Oh, hey, we got the same free.
yeah,
just
for the
kidding.
audio
From them.
listeners, this is Quentin, and it's half of his face is human, and he's transforming into the werewolf, and on the other half of his face is it's beautiful artwork. Wow,
And it's like blue and red monochrome.
It's
Yeah.
gorgeous.
that's really cool. Some very
One of my
talented
treasured
people.
possessions.
I just suffering. It's just crazy because like you have people that are like, oh yeah, I was just doodling whatever, like Snarp on the Discord. It's like, hey, here's this doodle I made, and it's the most harrowing, like Willy centric, beautifully laid out, like looks like a Renaissance painting,
Mhm.
angsty thing, and you're like, that was a doodle that you inked? What? Like it's just
Yeah.
people are crazy
Yeah.
talented.
I
and-
have to go through all of that because I started looking through, and it was just really incredible stuff and some fun stuff too. Like I think Madelyn, you posted something about Barnabas's chin or something, and how you hate
Yeah.
how everyone draws Barnabas with
the manly chin.
a manly chin, and you drew a comparison between.
The man's a Dorito, damn it.
Yeah, I can send you some tips afterwards on
How to find stuff.
There's a way to just have it show images in the
Okay.
channel.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And that's the other good thing about Discord. You can search for stuff too and find it
Yeah.
super easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another
Discord's
thing-
like having little fan conversations just every day. So it's like your own
Yeah.
personal fan meetup, but it's just like casual chatting.
Yeah.
At least
I
for
s-
us.
I saw you posted Madelyn posted an announcement that you were all coming onto the podcast, and for people to give their thoughts about the Discord, and somebody commented on Tina's fiction. It was like AU Sarah vampire fiction, and I realized, oh, AU is alternate universe, right?
Yes.
So if Sarah had been a vampire in an alternate universe, right? So that's incredible. Can you talk about that?
Oh boy. Yeah, so basically that just came about where I was like, I see a lot of fanfic and from both on fanfic.net
Wait,
and
before you
AO3.
keep going, you might want to clarify that this isn't. You haven't written anything for this, right? This
I
isn't-
have, I just haven't posted it anywhere.
Okay.
Okay.
This isn't like a fan fiction story that you can go and read. This is just
Not yet,
ideas that
but
we
I just have to get my life together.
I
I was
know
like,
that one.
wow, look at all this. What if Josette, and what if Maggie, and what if Julia, and what if Willie? And I was like, I'm tired of seeing the insert love interest here was vampire. What if we made it small vampire child, and like I also am just a big consumer of vampire media. So I'm like, there's a lot of like cool idiosyncrasies here, and also it would be painfully angsty and fun to write. So I just started writing a little something about it one day and like sending it in the Discord, like, oh, there's something I'm working on, and that person in particular really liked it and latched onto it. Yeah.
That's really cool. Why is the Discord server called? Okay, so I'm gonna put this. It's called Dark Shadows is a bad franchise. I assume that's an in joke, but or something.
The server title of the server is just the Dark Shadows Discord, I believe.
Oh, okay.
But Dark Shadows is a bad franchise is my personal username on the
damn.
Discord.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And yeah, that is just
because it's true.
It's an in joke with like 7 layers to it. But
yeah,
basically I got it in my head where it's like, what if just like hearing it in my head where it's like the Dan Curtis Productions voiceover guy just like saying Dark Shadows is a bad franchise and things like that. And yeah, it's just a bunch of like silly, goofy stuff.
Yeah. I think it is in a bad franchise in comparison to other franchises that market themselves very well.
It's good media, but it's bad as a franchise. If you know,
yes,
and that's how I mean it.
I mean, there was very little Dark Shadows licensing going on, and other than MPI and the second Barnabas bobblehead that looks, I don't know who sculpted that, but
I'm still amazed that they haven't done Funko Pops yet. I'm not saying that I want them.
Me too. I hate Funko Pops,
Me
but
too,
but
I would
Barnabas.
be legally obligated to buy it. They made Gilligan ones,
I
like
hate
just recently.
So, but I would sell out for Barnabas.
I would sell. Me too.
Same. I would absolutely get a Barnabas Funko Pop, and they the Collinwood Historical Society did a mock-up of what it would look like, and I was like,
they've made Funko Pops for like the most obscure stuff already. They've made Funko Pops for stuff that is more obscure than Dark Shadows. So
yeah,
they'll get to it.
Every WWE guy has a Funko Pop.
Yeah. I wonder if Jim Pearson knows what a Funko Pop is. Everyone send Funko Pops to Jim Pearson.
Yes, they're hideous, but
inundate him with Funko Pops. Yeah, I would hope that they would do that at some point. It would be a perfect thing, even for like Halloween time. It would be great. I think if we see a new Dark Shadows project, like a high profile thing like the Mark B. Perry show or something or anything.
Yeah,
like
if
that.
the reboot goes through.
Or if they finally release the Night of Dark Shadows Dan Curtis cut, like they keep saying maybe might happen.
I just interviewed Darren Gross. I posted that episode. He's the one who did the restoration of Night of Dark Shadows, and
I'll have to watch that one.
Release the Curtis cut.
Yeah,
release the Curtis cut.
Yeah. Pulling from some of the other things that people said here, I'd love to read a couple of these other comments from here. All of it, says Emster.
Yep, that's the one who did the art.
Well, okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, what they love about the Discord. Moon Sim says, I would say that this server and y'all really helped me discover and enjoy the show better. I probably wouldn't have given as much thought to certain ships or characters without people here professing their love for them, like B/J as a ship. I assume that's Barnabas and Julia.
Yes.
Willie, Jason and his relationship with Willie, Bill Malloy, who I didn't know existed before, Stokes, pretty much anyone, LOL, besides Sarah and Maggie, who had my attention right away. So this is referring to the fanfic. There's like an area channel there for ships, which is relationship stories, and then we have the jokes, the range of ideas, the overall atmosphere, says Emster. Emra says, I discovered that there were other current fans of Dark Shadows, period. I didn't have access to Dark Shadows fan communities when I first fell in love with the show and just thought that I was alone. So that's seems like a common thread that you had all these. Was that, I mean, younger people in your school and things like that, did anybody know who Dark Shadows was in your age group?
Like
nobody is.
Some of the teachers did, but no one who, I mean, we went to a small school, but no one my age knew anything about it. So
Yeah.
Nobody knew what a Dark Shadows was, and like I said, I had to drag all my friends to see the Johnny Depp movie, and then they had to deal with me for 20 minutes on the car ride home because we were like 15, 16, whatever at the time, so not only one of us drove. Me ranting and raving. The worst part was a friend turned to me at the end of the film and went, "So it was like Michelle Pfeiffer and that Roger guy, like were they married or like what?" And I had to be
Oh,
like,
no.
"Ah, Jesus," that broke me. So yeah.
My friends have not. I've gotten a couple of them sucked into Dark Shadows. Some have not gotten into it, and they love Buffy the Vampire Slayer and True Blood and all this other stuff. And I'm like, those shows wouldn't exist if it weren't for Dark Shadows. You gotta watch Dark Shadows.
Yeah, one of the other reasons why it was hard to connect, like there wasn't a lot of people my own age who knew about the show or who we could convert or get into the show, was that this was before streaming was online still. Like I'm talking like 2013, 2014. I was watching the show from Netflix discs in the mail. And
illegally on YouTube when it still existed, and then using
Or,
the
like, yeah,
Wayback
on
Machine
Daily
to find
Motion.
the episodes I was missing.
Daily
Yeah.
Motion, where half the episodes
Daily Motion, Vimeo.
Was,
was in frame.
Did you watch it on the
playing
Sci-Fi channel when they were running it on there?
I'm sorry,
think
we
The-
didn't
the
see the Sci-Fi channel.
I don't think I got the Sci-Fi channel either. I mean,
Okay.
I got it now,
Mhm.
but as a
had
youngin',
basic cable, so I didn't really watch much TV anyway because we just got the 13 channels in PBS.
Cyber
Right.
Chase.
Yeah. The thing that always boggles my mind is when fans like Tina, you mentioned Doctor Who, and I have friends who are like Doctor Who fans, but they can't make the jump to Dark Shadows. And I feel that like
They are kindred spirits.
totally. Yeah. 60s and 70s Doctor Who is not a far cry from Dark Shadows. It's very, even the look of it is very similar. So
First Doctor's my favorite, if you can tell.
the first Doctor, yeah.
William
Hartnell, yeah.
So that's probably made Dark Shadows absorption a little easier because
Yeah.
I'm like, yes.
Did you see that that AI audio restoration that they posted of William Hartnell as the first Doctor? It was on. There's a new technology. I think it's Adobe put out that where they take audio that's kind of fuzzy sounding, and then they just reconstruct it so that it sounds crystal clear, as if the person is right there, like HD talking to you. And they did it with the William Hartnell first Doctor. I was watching on YouTube.
Yeah, with one of his speeches, and did I cry? Maybe, but that's fine. It's fine.
It was really impressive. I was like, wow, that sounded just crystal clear. And then I want to jump in here with this comment too, which will lead me to Tina's article here. Snarp posted, "I've really enjoyed the way that people here analyze Dark Shadows through an LGBT lens in a variety of ways, whether that means considering the real world legacy of LGBT actors in the series or just taking a flippant everyone in DS is gay because I said so LOL approach to character headcanons." So I noticed that too when I was going through that. That's definitely an element there that comes up a lot, and just open discussion about that, which I think is really fun and is also reflective of sort of the younger spirit of that fan community, where this is just pretty awesome that people are just speaking in this way. And Tina, you wrote an article that I didn't even realize it was you who wrote it until Madelyn told me, because all these nicknames, because I had seen sites, and I said, oh, wait a minute.
Have like 5 different names across different
You can't find us.
Track of us.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh wait, sites is Madelyn. How I took
bad franchise is
yes, and DS is a bad franchise. And I'm like, okay, so and then I met Tina at Seaview, and then Madelyn. Well, I went in the thing, everyone was calling you Kaz, and I said,
Yes.
oh, who's this? You were the first one, I think, to welcome me. I said, who's Kaz? I said, oh, is that Tina? And then I look, oh, that's them, it's Tina. And then I realized, wait a minute, Kaz, that sounds familiar. And I went back to when I did the LGBTQ Pride episode for the podcast way back when I first started the show, and I saw, remember one of the comments by Madelyn said, was talking about trans characters, trans representation and Dark Shadows and stuff. And you said, oh, my friend Kaz wrote that article, because I commented about the article. And then I said, wait a minute, Kaz and Tina are one and the same.
Yes, I go by both.
Yeah, that's really cool. So I read this. This was identity in Dark Shadows, or how gender nonconformity can be found even in the most gothic of soaps. And one line that you put in the article that I love was that Dark Shadows is a deeply human story about inhuman people. I love that.
Thank
But
you.
can you talk a little bit about that article, if you don't mind?
Well, I wrote it for Gaily Dreadful, who runs a wonderful horror LGBTQ blog where they do reviews and stuff like that. And every June they do something called Gaily Helpful, which is where they have a bunch of people come in and write articles, and people donate, and that goes to various queer charitable places. I believe that year it was either the Trevor Project or one of those. So I knew I wanted to write something for them, as, you know, someone who loves horror and is also queer. I was like, yes, perfect. My two things can combine. And I've always kind of felt those sort of vibes off of Dark Shadows. There's just, besides the fact that there's something just very inherently queer about horror characters and spooky characters like that. And I'm sure we could talk about that till the cows come home. But I really wanted to talk about that through the gender aspect, and something that I loved, which is Dark Shadows. And that article kind of came about. It took a very long time for me to figure out that I was non-binary. There was a lot of times where I'm like, I feel really icky. I think when someone calls me this, or someone says, hey girl, and I'm like, why is that? And then finally it's like, oh yeah, now it all makes sense. And it's really hard not to kind of see yourself in certain characters, even if that wasn't the original intention. Like I've mentioned in the article, especially a character like Jeb, and especially a character like Barnabas, and especially Adam, my Blorbo Adam, about not liking who you are, what society has told you, the thing that you are, and longing for the person who you actually want to be, and like wanting to change both physically and emotionally and mentally and stuff like that. So I'm a lot of the comments I got on it was very, very nice. There was a couple of people who were like, what are they talking about? There's nothing like this in Dark Shadows. And I'm like, there really is, if you're actually looking for it, or if you're one of those people in a queer community or some other marginalized community, you can easily find yourself within those Dark Shadows characters. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in that episode I got a lot of that episode was made up of audio clips from various fans who all echoed that feeling of that connection to Dark Shadows. I talked in that episode about being a trans woman. I transitioned a very long time ago at this point. Well, not as long as like I'm Christine Jorgensen or something, but a long time ago, but not that long ago. But I guess, you know, as a child, that aspect of Dark Shadows, or I wasn't reading that into Dark Shadows, but it was resonating on that level. Like in retrospect and looking back, I'm like, yeah, I definitely. And when I read your article, I said, oh yeah, totally, all of that with Jeb and Adam, absolutely. And one theory I loved that you put out was and I saw you both talking about this in the Discord too, was Julia, the trans Julia theory, which I thought was very interesting. And can you talk a little bit about that? Like why, where did that idea come from? I mean, I'm sure the writers didn't intend it at the time, but it's very interesting for sure.
Yeah, can I have a go at this one?
Of course.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I've seen a couple people independently reach the idea of Julia could be trans, and I don't mean Julia could be trans as like, oh, you know, if you secretly like read the text in the background and you like, you know, there's not the support
if you look at
in the text of the show, obviously, but the way that the fact that they initially intended it to be Julian Hoffman, and you can say, oh, you can take that and say, I want to believe, I choose to to believe, because I think it's fun to believe that that was her dead name, or the name that she was born with before she transitioned, and stuff like that.
And best friend Woodard just mucked it up that one time.
Yeah, and that when she finds Barnabas and all of these things with Barnabas, the way that that would intersect with her supplying Barnabas with these treatments that gradually change his nature to what he wants to be, which, if for anyone who's unfamiliar with trans issues, part of the transitioning process is hormone replacement therapy, which is basically that you take injections or pills, or there's other application methods for hormones, where either estrogen if you want to become a woman, or testosterone if you want to become a man. And just like, you know, she's just giving him vampire hormone replacement therapy.
Vampire HRT.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. You back in the day, you would never have read this kind of analysis of Dark Shadows or looking at it through that lens. So it's really really cool to explore Dark Shadows in that way.
Like, and I would poke around on older fan groups, and I would always see people talking about, ooh, Dark Shadow, like the gay angle of Dark Shadows, where Barnabas is like analogy for a closeted gay man. And I think that's a really good take, and I don't disagree with that at all, but I was confused and kind of surprised that no one had taken it in like the trans or like a gender. They'd only focused on like deviant sexuality and not deviant gender identity.
Mm-hmm. I think,
and like that's one of the differences between like the older generations and the newer generations in
mm-hmm.
the way that we interpret the show.
Back then, you were not encouraged to be
disclose that at all,
open about it. Yeah, it was Benjamin standards. You go through the process, you do your 1 year real life test and like surgery, and
you move to a different city, and
yeah, and it's they used to call it stealth. They used to call it. It was like you're not supposed to, once the whole purpose to get from point A to point B. And it was only not very long ago when I talked about that, because there was a bill in Massachusetts, their bathroom bill that they were trying to pass. And there was this just repulsive commercial that I saw on TV. And I was so angry that I posted about on social media about my background, my late husband's background, because he was a trans man. He had transitioned FDM. And, but most people were not encouraged to openly talk about that or discuss it. So that might also play into why you didn't see that much discourse about it with regard to Dark Shadows as well. But yeah, fascinating, really cool stuff. But this is just part of what goes on here in the server. There's discussion of this nature as well. There's also like jokes and fun stuff. There's a lot of fans of pop culture in general, because I find Dark Shadows fans tend to be fans of also other cool stuff out there. So I really enjoyed it. How can people now? So is this open to, I asked before the show, and I'd like you to elaborate on this. Is this open for anybody to join? Can anybody jump into the Discord regardless of who they are, how old they are, whatever? Is it available for anybody to use?
Yeah, I'm gonna say that it's open. Like it's been pretty much contained to Tumblr refugees so far.
Truly.
But yeah, let's put a link to it in the video for this on YouTube.
Okay.
It's I'll be interested to see how people take it, because we are unapologetically
weird
Gen Z, and we are like on 7 layers of internet self-referential stuff all the time. So it's open to everyone. Like, please come check it out. We've got some really cool stuff there, but you know, there's gonna be weird stuff in there.
That's another thing I'd say. The difference between younger fandom in terms of like memes and jokes and like that kind of culture to like older fan, it's two different worlds, very separate, very wild.
But in terms of the material,
good stuff that's worth reading through the internet.
The big Barnabungus.
The what? Wait, what? I missed that one.
I'll tell you later.
That's for another day.
That's gonna take another podcast just to explain that by itself.
I can't stop laughing. It's been like 2 years.
I created this meme image off of Big Chungus. If anyone knows what Big Chungus is, I'm not going to explain that.
No, it takes too long.
But it was like Big Chungus redrawn as Barnabas, and I called it Big Barnabungus.
Okay.
Gosh.
Okay.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
I do not know what any of that was, but I look
don't need
forward
to
to
know what
finding
that is.
out.
Oh Lord.
It's not bad. It's not like it's not.
It's just
I like
cursed
that.
in a great way.
It's just really stupid.
It's very stupid but fun.
Okay. One thing. Okay. Another thing I want to ask you, like future of Dark Shadows. What would you like to see happen to Dark Shadows? How can Dark Shadows go from being a bad franchise to being a good franchise? What can Dark Shadows do to, I guess, going forward? What would you like to see besides a Funko Pop? What else?
Why don't you answer this one first, Max? You haven't said anything in a while.
Yeah, Max.
I had a couple things that I was gonna like rapid fire mention, but I'll field this question also. We've talked about it a lot. Imagining like, what if they did a Dark Shadows reboot? And there's always whispers. There have been a couple articles in the past couple of years like, oh, they're reviving the copyright, like this channel might try to make a reboot or something like that. Dark Shadows is such a
Unwieldy.
Well, unwieldy is one word. The direction I was going to take is it's so subjective.
Yeah.
And there's so many different ways to approach it. And we know that if they rebooted it, it would not be precisely to our liking. It would be a new take. But really, that's okay too. I say that cautiously, knowing that Dark Shadows 2012 was a new take.
It certainly took something.
But like, that reinterpretations, a future of reinterpretations, and in the meantime, sharing and circulating what we have now, not only the show itself and trying to keep the show as accessible as possible, but the stories of what it was like to be really interested in Dark Shadows at various points in time. What it was like.
But that's not like what you want documented in a remake or a reboot or a new show or a new piece of media. Like that's what the question is about.
I was just thinking.
What would you want to put in the reboot?
Oh man. Oh goodness.
Just David Selby.
That's okay. Yeah. I'll go next.
David Selby's playing everybody.
Yeah, okay, you go.
Didn't understand the homework. So for me,
he has the coffee off of Mads.
Yeah, I don't have any like plot things that I definitely know I would or wouldn't want. For me, it would all be about the presentation, the tone, the production choices more than the actual plot. Now, like, don't get me wrong, you can definitely do all the production stuff that I love and still have a plot that makes me throw up. But but it's like when I watch the 90s show or when I watch the 2004 pilot, I look at it and it doesn't feel like Dark Shadows. And I have seen things that have been made recently that feel like Dark Shadows. And
like what, for example?
What we do in the shadows personally.
That one show. Do you remember Moonson was talking about it? It's like an animated show.
Oh, yeah. They were referencing Dark Shadows in it. Hang on.
Ben 10?
No. Dark Shadows to be Ben 10.
No.
He has a little Leviathan dial on his wrist. Barnabas has a little Leviathan dial on his wrist.
Yeah. They referenced Dark Shadows in a cartoon, in an animated show.
Yes, I forget what the show was, but she was like watching a soap opera that was in black and white. I'm like, this is, and it's just like, oh, it's just Dark Shadows.
Oh,
I
no
think the
kidding.
creator's a fan of Dark Shadows.
Wow.
Oh, why can't
Because
I?
I said
find it?
bet when Ben 10 had a character that was supposed to be Barnabas that they put in it, but
I don't think they would ever do this in the modern day, but I would want the reboot to be as low production cost as possible in terms of like editing and shots. I want it to be like you can do whatever you want to modernize the setting and the locations and stuff, but I don't want it to be overproduced in terms of like special effects. And
That on a
because
string.
that's what kills the vibe for me for a lot of these new Dark Shadows things, where like one of the things that really bugged me in the 90s one was the way that they gave Barnabas like color contacts when he got bloodlust. And that just, it felt like it cheapened the acting. Like instead of having to have the actor convey bloodlust through, body language and like actually acting, it's just like, oh no, we flipped the switch and he's got the yellow eyes, which means that he's got the bloodlust now. Watch out, everybody. It's
he hungry.
Yes. How I would say it is that like excessively high production value or reliance on special effects detracts from the theatricality of it, and the theatricality is so essential. Whatever the interpretation of Dark Shadows may be, theatricality has got to be there.
Okay. Good. What about merchandise? Would you like to see outside?
Anything. I would like anything that's more than just a t-shirt, please. I mean, you've probably seen, we've talked at length about the Dark Horse comics or Dynamite.
Yeah.
I don't think they did Dark Horse Dark Shadows comics.
No, I think Dark Horse was Doctor Who. Too many D's. There's a joke there. No, they weren't my cup of tea, but I was glad they existed. Like I'm glad to have owned them and read them, and the art was the cover arts were beautiful, and like I liked like, oh my god, new and different stories and whatnot. This is fun. Again, a Funko Pop would be nice. I feel like there's a market for so many other things. Bob Eisel made his own version of Clue, Dark Shadows Clue. We probably couldn't call it Clue, but that's amazing. That's fun. I would love to play that with my buddies.
Speaking of things that Bob made, the music boxes.
The music box, yes.
Theme, Quentin's theme, Angelique's theme, just a little, like the hand crank music box movement.
Yeah.
That he just made for fun.
Yeah.
In fact, not only would I buy that, a little bit unrelated, but I just acquired a functional phonograph.
Yes.
That I would like to make my own custom wax cylinder for to play Quentin's theme. And I hoped that I would have it today, but I'm picking it up on Saturday. So
wow,
that's fantastic. Pull out an entire phonograph.
That's amazing. That would be really, really cool if you can pull that off. Are you gonna paint it up and everything to make it look like Quentin's gramophone, or?
I'm definitely gonna have to get a different horn if I want to make it like Quentin's gramophone, because the horn it comes with is not like the one on the show at all. But I don't think I'm gonna do anything from the box because it's actually one of the people who I worked with for a really long time at the historical site who died. And it belonged to his great grandmother and it was passed down. So I don't want to make any modifications to it out of respect in his memory.
Okay.
You'll just get haunted by something.
Yes, yeah, indeed.
If I get haunted by Michael, that I would not play.
Just don't put a wire across the stairs so people don't trip over it.
Yes, I live on the third floor of my apartment building.
Oh no, you don't want to do that.
I mean, even if it's something silly like a glassware set or some plates or something that has anything besides Angelique, Quentin, and Barnabas on it. They are, but I'd like a variety. As much as I love Angelique, Quentin, Barnabas, and Josette, are you aware that there's a beautiful ensemble of characters? Yeah, here's my Joan Bennett plate. Here's my Liz plate.
She's the star. So why doesn't she have a plate?
When they put out the lunchbox, I was not happy that
there's no Julia on it, right?
Barnabas was on it twice, and Julia was not on it.
Julia wasn't on it at all. Josette made the cut, but on the side.
I'm fine with Josette being on the side, but the fact that there is no Julia anywhere on it, but Barnabas gets to be on it twice, because I see a lot of the times where it's like people will put Barnabas, Quentin, and Angelique as like the big three, but I think that Julia is included in the murder club.
I think yes. I think Julia gets. I think Julia
Remember.
gets. You're right. Everybody thinks the big three, and Julia, I think, should be included as well. But I think she often gets forgotten because she's human.
But
Because
that's even more impressive that she gets to play in the big leagues.
yeah, she can
and
hold her own.
doesn't-
She can
yeah,
stand
she
toe
is
to toe. Yeah,
hours.
and she's a huge part of the show. She's a huge character in the show. I don't know if it's just, I mean, I'm surprised MPI hasn't done any, like, of all the things they've done over decades, they haven't done one Julia thing. One thing I'd love is the medallion. I'd love to get the Julia medallion.
Someone on one of the few
Mhm.
Facebook page I am on, one of the fan
Yes.
pages actually recreated the medallion
Yes.
with this beautiful, it looked gorgeous. I cannot think
Yeah.
of their name for the life
Is
of
it
me.
Patty Carapenter?
Patty something like that. Yes.
Yeah, it's
It was
amazing. Yeah.
gorgeous.
Yeah, it's really cool. But the hypnotism medallion, I mean, I think that
It's
would
an
be a
iconic
no-brainer.
thing. It's the
Yeah.
music box, the
Is it-
gramophone, the medallion, or a sedative. Give people.
Yeah, a sedative.
Is
Now from MPI, order your own sedative.
Is it possibly an issue with the likeness for like the Grayson estate for licensing?
Matthew Hall is pretty open and active. In fact, he's selling a bunch of stuff from Sam and Grayson on his website, through his blog. He's selling like stuff from their house and old scripts and
Oh,
everything.
so that like Gucci bag I saw on eBay for $2,000 is
That's
probably
legit.
real?
It might have been, yeah, that might have been from Matthew Hall, because he's been selling stuff from his parents were collectors, like they kept everything, and so he's selling just
I know what that's like.
No, really? Call him out.
So he might, maybe, if they went through him. I've seen fans online saying, there's no Julia there. Back in the 60s, we had a couple of the bubblegum cards, and that was about it. But
anything that's not just the logo, I suppose. The logo is nice. It's a beautiful logo. I love how things say Dark Shadows, but are you aware that there's people in Dark Shadows?
Yeah, but you called out Joan Bennett. That was a good call, because she was the star of the show, and
Her name is the first credit on every episode she's in.
It's always Joan Bennett as Elizabeth Collins Stoddard.
Yeah. Very little Vicky stuff too. Victoria Winters, very little Victoria Winters.
And honestly, very little just Maggie stuff, considering, I mean, there's a lot of Josette, but I'm like, are you aware that Catherine Lee Scott played other characters?
Yeah.
Have you, Louis Edmonds, anyone?
I'd love a Count Patofi item too.
Yes,
The hand.
yes.
They should sell
like
the
a
hand in the
glove.
box.
They sell the hot dog finger hands from Everything Everywhere All at Once. Can I get a rubber Patofi hand, please?
Yes.
I'd pay for that.
You know what else I'd love to see is, you mentioned What We Do in the Shadows. I'd love to see them reference Dark Shadows somewhere, like a painting of Barnabas, or some reference to Collinsport, or in these shows.
There's no way they haven't watched it or like know of it.
Yes, because I've seen you. There are things in there where you're like, wait a minute.
Hang on.
Like, I think Laszlo, I think, has a ring that seems like it could be. It's not like Barnabas's ring, but I was like, did they get that idea from? It would just be cool if Jermaine Clement, if you're in Taika Waititi,
if you're listening now,
if you're listening,
what's up?
I'll pay you.
Yeah. And I'd like to see more
subject,
of that in these shows. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
On the subject of merch, it's not necessarily new merch, but the merch that we know. You mentioned the trading cards,
Mm-hmm.
and you've got the Marilyn Ross books back there.
Yeah.
And the vampire van.
And the vampire van.
I have been looking for that.
Vampire vans. I have to mention one of the few people I've ever run into in person who knows Dark Shadows and collects some Dark Shadows stuff. His name's Jeremiah Crow, and he's helped me find some Dark Shadows items. He has a store in Elizabethtown, PA. It's a
store / art gallery / sideshow
and museum. Yes, he's
cool.
a curator
That sounds awesome.
of spooky oddities. He's
like the mermaid, where it's like a monkey, fish
Yeah.
and the bullet that they pulled out of Jesse James or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah,
Pennsylvania is one heck of a town.
If you're passing through Lancaster County, he's at 6 North Market Street, Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania, and he's got a website, jeremiahcrow.com.
We're
Okay.
not sponsored or affiliated.
No, he's just
He's just got a cool
Dark
name.
Shadows friend of mine, and I wanted to.
That's not, yeah, I'd love to
Okay.
check that out at some point. That sounds really cool. You also wanted to say, you said you were going to fire off a few things about the Discord server that we didn't touch on. What did you want to mention?
Real quick, you're too modest to mention it, but things that can be found on the Discord, you've curated some incredible playlists on Spotify
Yes.
of Dark Shadows inspired
Oh,
songs from the era, songs that like feel like they'd fit the show. And you are digitizing zines. A very
yes.
Yeah,
important project.
I was gonna wait because I still wanted to talk about one more thing. I know we're running over an hour.
Just
but-
one
That's
more.
okay. No. I always say, oh, let's do an hour, and then I end up going way
Because you know
longer.
it's gonna be
It's gonna
longer
be
than an
7
hour.
hours later.
Yeah.
I wanted to circle back and say one more thing about the differences in the way that young fans interpret the show versus older fans.
Yeah.
And I can't, in all of those kind of statements, I can't claim to speak for every young fan. I can only speak for like the Discord in our little group. But we don't really see Barnabas as being like this hero or a romantic figure in the sense of a romantic figure who is going to sweep you off your feet. We think he is a sad little wet pathetic man.
No
and we
brain
love him for
cells.
that, but it's we don't see him as like a heartthrob like men. Like I've read things from fans where it's like, oh, growing up Barnabas was the epitome of like this dark power and menace, and I'm like,
This guy?
He's on the
he's
cover of
actually tonight's Biggest Loser.
he's on the cover of
I
Tiger
feel like
Beat in
that's
16
probably-
magazine.
It's probably more owed to just Jonathan Frid than the character of
Mm.
Barnabas.
What, being pathetic?
No. No, the fact that so many people
That he's
had a crush on him.
attractive.
Yeah, well, it's the fact that so many people had a crush on him, and the fact that when you didn't have access to the show whenever you want, there's a lot of like mental drift that happens, and you make your own version of Barnabas in your head, and you can't fact check it against the show, and that is what makes Dark Shadows so subjective. And even
Awesome.
us as young fans, even though we have access to the show at a fingertip whenever we are on our phones, we still have that kind of stuff where we internalize these characters, and it's very individual.
Mhm.
And the fact that it's immediately accessible to us in ways that it never was originally hasn't changed. I mean, it's changed it, but it's still there. And that's one of like the integral fun things about Dark Shadows to me, is that you can have such a widely different interpretations of a character, and it doesn't really matter if it matches the source material exactly or not.
Sure. And I think that applies to any work of fiction, where you can have different interpretations of it, come at it from different
Yeah, but
perspectives.
just the nature of Dark Shadows, I think,
Yeah.
lends itself to that more than some other things do.
Yeah, sure. I never saw Barnabas as sexy. I also never saw him as the hero. Barnabas is a deeply damaged individual who's done some horrific things. He's done some terrible things. But I think there's that glimmer of humanity. He strives to be better, but he always screws up. He isn't. It's in his nature to do that. So I think back in the day, they'd always play up, oh, Barnabas is the hero and Angelique is the villain. And
yeah, like 16 magazine,
and
like the marketing surrounding Dark Shadows painted a very different picture than what the show actually delivered.
And it depended on which audience you were talking to. Also, because I found there are different. I mean, I went on this. I mean, this is very reductive, but I was being silly, and I divided up the Dark Shadows audience into 4 Harry Potter-esque houses, and I did Spooky House, which was represented by the cover of Famous Monsters of Filmland. I did Soapy House, which was daytime afternoon TV cover magazine. There was Teeny House, which was a Tiger Beat magazine cover with Barnabas on it, and Groovy House, which was the stoners who were tripping out and watching Dark Shadows in the afternoon. It was like a cover. I found a 1970 college notebook and drew like band logos on it, and a Barnabas's cane with like an LSD tab on its tongue, and so there, and then there's also Irony House, which I'm not sure if Irony House, because I found there are fans that are like,
Fifth House.
what's that?
The Forbidden Fifth House.
The Forbidden Fifth is Irony. Are people in Irony House actually fans because they like Dark Shadows? Ironically, I don't know. That's a debate for
people who go on YouTube on any Dark Shadows video and say, "Oh, it's so fun to point and laugh at them when they trip and fall down the stairs," and I love watching them screw up. And
it's so funny when they flub their lines, and I'm like, is it?
Is
I
it
mean,
really?
yes, but is it?
Are you that? It's like, are you that easily?
Let's all point and laugh.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's real. It's more realistic. I mean, sometimes people are talking and they trip on what they're saying, or they fall. Like,
I think that's actually
Yeah,
a good benefit to the show.
Yeah.
And when I say it's like when we want to see it reboot and we don't like high production value, there's such like a homey kind of vibe to Dark Shadows. And besides the fact that it was this cast, it was this crew, it was Dan Curtis and all of his teeth. There's just like the vibe of, oh no, this is Collinwood feels lived in, and some people flub over their lines, and there are mistakes that are being made, and people are walking into walls or falling out of the shot, and I'm like, that's just life and realistic and whatnot,
right?
Despite all the weird nonsense that's happening. Yes, sure, there's blood being sucked out of cows, and I don't know who this ghost guy is getting really mad about his music choices and whatnot, but it's so very grounded in reality. Yeah, and that's what makes the OG show so good.
Yeah, the ways that it's grounded, it's extremely grounded in certain ways, and then it's completely off the rails in other ways. But
yes,
you have to have some facet to keep it grounded in an adaptation or a reboot.
Agreed.
And maybe remember that it's an ensemble show. Maybe remember it's not just about. That's the thing that always gets me. If they ever reboot it, I'd like them not to start with Barnabas showing up. I know I am of not the majority when I say that. He could be the mid-season surprise or the end of season 1 stinger or something. I feel like, as a lover of the early beginning episodes, yes, all 6 of us, we're here.
I love those too. They're great.
Thank you.
I think they're cool.
Madelyn.
I just remembered something that I would like to see in a reboot. So if they go through with the reincarnation, like the Next Generation family thing, and they're like, oh, and maybe we'll pepper in some of like the returning, like the old characters that come back under new names and new faces. The second I heard that, I'm just like picturing Quentin Collins coming back, and he's like they explain it that like someone took a crayon and just like drew on his portrait, so he's a new face now.
Yeah, they painted over it. I don't know.
The ghost of Carl Collins, his younger brother.
Yeah, his defaced,
gave him a comedy mustache.
So he's got a big mustache or something. He's got mustache and big Coke bottle glasses.
He's got the Groucho Marx glasses.
Yeah, I'm sure if we see a sequel series, which I'd like to see, because we have not had that yet. Everybody tries to reboot, and like Tina was saying, it's always Barnabas. What's that?
I said, make it a sequel. I do not want another. Here's Barnabas again.
Here's how Barnabas came to town. I'm like, we've already done this. We've done Curtis did it twice.
I'd like Barnabas.
Actually.
Barnabas, I want Barnabas to show up. I want there to be Barnabas, but I agree it should be like it should lead to that eventually, but not right away. And I'd like the idea of a sequel series. That said, I have issues with the Big Finish audio plays, even though those are sequels.
Well.
Yeah, I
welcome
have
to the club.
Yeah, it's not. Especially I find that as they've gone on, it's gotten more and more like off the rails in the tone wise. It's like this is not the gothic.
Very odd.
Yeah.
I will say especially the early ones. I forget which one I was listening to. Something about sand, and it was a Maggie one.
Oh
It
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
it had me for a lot of it. There was some beautiful descriptions, and I'm like, oh, this thing is going to be in Maggie's head as the result of her trauma. It's
Yeah.
not going to be actually a boogeyman. And then they made it a boogeyman.
They
Yeah.
always
Oh,
make it a boogeyman.
they all
There was
unfortunately
a sewer man.
it was. It's him, Slender Man. He's here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
unfortunately, as
They
someone who
literally
also,
put Slender Man in one of them. Like
they
it was
really
like the
did though.
They
and red
did.
all over, like the Burke
Oh
one.
yeah, the Burke one. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, hang on, he's gonna find
Yeah.
8
Wait
pages.
a minute.
No.
The
Oh.
Big Finish ones where
Yeah.
it was just two
Gross.
characters talking and it was like filling out a moment that we didn't see on the show were all very good. But when they try and do original stories, I have a problem with the writing with them, where the writing seems extremely sloppy in
Yeah.
terms of just like the continuity, internal continuity within the story, like character motivations, even just within the story, not between different dramas, but within the drama.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, one of the ones that got me really, really pissed off in terms of a dumb plot or monster was the one where they tried to establish that you could live forever if you okay, Grim Reaper or like Reapers are real, and you can live forever if you bonk them on the head and run away when they come to take your soul.
Wow.
Like Minecraft.
Yeah, just like
Some of them I love. Some of them are really good, but they just don't feel like Dark Shadows to me. And don't get me wrong, I'm glad the actors have gotten work doing
Oh yeah,
playing
yeah,
like I'm
coming,
yeah.
you know.
I'm
That's
glad they
I love-
exist.
yes.
But I think a problem lies in the fact is that Big Finish has been doing Doctor Who for a very, very long time. They've
Mhm.
been very, very successful with Doctor Who, and a lot of times they'll pull certain writers to do something else to see
Yeah,
how
it-
some
it
things work.
feels like
So
Doctor Who
unfortunately, so
went off.
when I was listening to a lot of them, I'm like, this is just a subpar Doctor Who Big Finish audio sometimes.
Yeah.
Or just like this could be a Doctor Who episode. You just got to slot, I don't know, take out Willie, throw in Tom Baker, and it's probably the same thing.
Right.
I would say the one the one I really got pissed off about. It was the one Liz audio. It was the one Liz audio, and they were explaining Vicky's origins. And it involved a ghost and like a like Majora's Mask blood moon thing, and Liz was not fazed by it. And then it's like she was Vicky's mother, and Vicky's father ended up being some rando named Victor. And I'm like, that is the lamest way you
I
could have
haven't
answered
heard
that
that
question.
one. Which
Don't
one is
listen. Oh golly gee, I went on a whole rant about. If you go into the Audio Live blog channel, I'm sure you could find me losing my mind.
I didn't even know they did one. Did they cast it? They must
I think Marie Wallace was reading it, if I recall correctly, and she was doing both voices because it was one of those. It was in a short story one.
I
Yeah, I was
see.
gonna say, it's in one of the compilations where they have 4 short stories and they're each like 30 minutes long.
Okay.
It was. I can see the cover because it was pink. It had 4 portraits, and I think it was about love themed. If
Yeah.
I can remember the name, I'll tell you later.
Some of
But
the recent.
it just. As obviously Liz is my favorite character. I'm so subtle about that. But I'm
tell us the Discord 5 times a day.
have you considered? No, listen. It's just like that's been such a big question in the show, like who are Vicky's parents, and you go about it in you soap operaed it. It's the most soap opera answer.
Yeah.
It was like the butler or the driver. Liz hooked up with her driver or groundskeeper. I'm like, that's basic soap opera-ness. That's not what I expected from Dark Shadows.
You know, Tina, I was listening to, this was a few years ago, I was listening to an interview with some of the writers, and I'm not knocking anybody. I hope if they're listening, I hope they're not offended, but they were talking about writing these stories, and they referenced like, oh, well, we're thinking in terms of American soap operas like Dynasty, and I was like, Dynasty in Dallas, and I said, no, that's way, because there was one where David is building a mine under Collinwood.
Yeah.
And I could feel that vibe coming from it, like, oh, this is totally pulling from that kind of a show, and that's going down the wrong path, I think, to do that. I think
just because Selby was on Falcon Crest, it does not mean.
Yeah, I think it just doesn't feel like gothic to me. Some of them do. Even some of the earlier ones. I remember there was one with like a turkey. It's like Thanksgiving. The turkey comes to life or something and attacks
Yeah.
Maggie. Or I was like, what is happening right now?
Yeah, the one where they asked Barnabas to get the turkey, and as it like go to the grocery store and pick it up at the deli counter, and
Yeah.
he just like trudges out into the snow and wrestles a wild turkey in his full like three-piece suit and drags it back.
That's kind of funny.
It is, but
Implied that
it
that's
doesn't feel
happening.
Dark Shadows to me. But it is funny. All right. Well, any closing thoughts here on the Discord? Anything any of you want our listeners to know about, or anything else?
I wanted to elaborate on something that Max brought up, and then I said that I wanted to wait to the end. I have been thank you. It's I'm fading here. I've been scanning zines and putting them in a Google Drive. That's been a goal of mine for many years. Back when I got into the show and I was first, looking around on the old Dark Shadows websites, which many of them no longer exist. Shout out to anyone who remembers Willie Loomis Saves Collinsport.
Yes.
But they had like lists of these zines, and it was just like a one sentence description of what the zine was, what the premise of the zine was, and like the cover of it. And I was always fascinated with them, and I always was like, man, there's so much content that's locked away on the page that is anyone saving these? And that's the historian in me coming out, where I want to archive these. So my very first paycheck for my first job, I blew it on buying a lot of zines on eBay, and I've been scanning them, and I have been putting them in a Google Drive, and there's been other people who have very graciously given me access to what they have scanned, and I've been able to add that and grow it. So, and I really like to share that and to disseminate that and make that available like a public resource for all of these Dark Shadow zines. So I'd love if we could put a link to that Google Drive in the description.
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
at some point I've been thinking about making like, what is it, like archive.org, an archive.org account, and putting them all on there, because that seems a little bit more official than a
Google Drive.
Yeah, I know Joe Escobar, who I had on for the 1897 episode, has loads of scans too.
Yeah, he's been very graciously given me some of his.
Yeah, he's and some of
Thank you,
those
Joe.
teen magazines.
Joe.
Yeah, Joe's great. Yeah, he's a great guy. And is very happy to share, and that's what fandom should be all about, is sharing with other fans. So that's great that you're willing to make that available to fans and putting that kind of work into it. So definitely send me the link. I will absolutely put it in the show notes, and I look forward to checking out that drive myself. I used to subscribe to all of those zines. I loved it was so exciting because it wasn't just pre-internet, so to get that envelope in the mail with a Dark Shadows fanzine in it was just,
it was a different kind of thing, and I get that. Yeah,
it was a highlight, and it had the fiction and the artwork, and also the articles. I used to love those speculation articles, like you talked about, in looking at Dark Shadows and interpreting it, and that it lends itself to that. And I used to love reading those speculation articles, and that's what I like doing on this podcast too, when we're talking about plots and stuff, is like looking at it from different angles and theories about things don't line up continuity wise, and like what is the in-show explanation for that? How do we figure it out? Like it's like a puzzle figuring that out. And the zines would have articles like that, and they had World of Dark Shadows and Inside the Old House were the biggies, but like Collinwood
I have
Revisited.
all of those. With Joe's help, I have every single issue of those two zines.
Yeah, those are the
Google Drive right now, and several of the concordances as well.
Great. Yeah, awesome. There's also like Windcliff Watch and Collinwood
Windcliff
Revisited.
Watch.
Parallel
the one that I've been
Times.
trying to find, I don't have any yet, is Wolf Tracks. Because
I remember that name. I
Chris
never
is one of my favorite characters.
Mm-hmm.
So
Really?
I would really love
Chris Jennings. Yeah.
So I would really love to find that, because that was like a werewolf, if you couldn't tell, a werewolf zine.
Yeah. Oh, very cool. Very cool. Awesome. I remember the name. I never subscribed to that one. I missed that one.
I think there's only 4 issues. It wasn't a very long running one.
Okay. cool.
And
Also,
one more thing that Max mentioned is that, yeah, I did make some playlists of music that like pop, or well, no, it's not all pop.
Music from the era, from the original
60s and 70s.
I love it.
And it's there's one playlist where it's more upbeat, and then there's one playlist where it's more somber.
and
Okay.
a Quentin playlist.
Yeah, but the Quentin playlist is like my very specific person. Like I'll put it in too.
It's still
but-
good.
Okay, we'll see.
Thank you.
I'll give you the links to those, and you can decide which one to do with them.
Okay, yeah, if you would, when we're done, if you just send me the list of the links, and I'll put
Yeah.
them in the show notes. So if people want to check out the Discord server, they can do
Yeah,
so.
and Discord.
Mhm.
That's the main one here.
What's that?
I said that's the main link here.
Yeah, the main
Discord.
link is Discord, but then we have the Google Drive with all the scanned fanzines, which I'm sure a lot of people are going to want to check that out. The Spotify playlists, which sound really cool. I look forward to checking that out myself. And anything else you want to send me, just send it along, and I'm happy to add it to the show notes. So with that said, I want to thank the three of you for taking the time this evening to sit down with me. It was great getting to meet you in person, and it's great getting to chat with you over Zoom for the podcast. I'm glad we were finally able to make this happen. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for inviting us. This has been an
Yeah.
amazing time, a privilege, and just really fun. So thank you so
Aw,
much. And it's
gosh.
been great meeting you, of course, too. That was the highlight.
Everything has said, yeah.
Aw, thank you so much. That's very kind of you.
Yeah,
Folks,
maybe even doing this again. Fingers crossed.
absolutely. That will certainly happen, I am sure. So, folks, thank you very much for listening to this episode of Terror at Collinwood. Please be sure to subscribe to the podcast, whether you listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, Stitcher, or whether you watch it on YouTube. Please subscribe. If you do watch on YouTube, this episode has a video component to it. There are a lot of cool things shown off here, like Lego Collinwood. So please do subscribe to the YouTube channel, like the video, and also tell your friends about the podcast. Spread it like the dream curse. Let them know about the podcast. And I look forward to seeing you all at Seaview Terrace. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. And for as long as they lived, the dark shadows never truly vanished, for there will always be terror at Collinwood. Terror at Collinwood is a Penny Dreadful production.